good way to compare the cost of doing ECS Classic, so to say, on EC2s versus using Fargate. This is there's kind of like, there are different costs here to factor in, right? There's just the operating cost of, the EC2s are probably going to be less expensive than Fargate. I don't think Fargate supports spot instances. So, I mean, there are more things you can do to control your operating costs with ECS on EC2, but you got to factor in the human cost also of operating that stuff. And that's where it's a little bit more fungible. It's harder to come up with this calculation. And it comes down to, hey, what are you trying to prove to your company? Do you want to stick on the EC2s? Well, I'm sure you can make an argument for that. Or do you want to go to Fargate? I'm sure you can come up with an argument for that, because there's enough gray area for both of these.
Hey, Eric.
Hey.
So this is RB. So this question came up because exactly what you were saying. Like it was something that needed to be sold to upper people to see if it was like a viable move. And just like you said, managing an EC2 versus jumping on a Fargate has its own benefits, which we've also tried to quantify. Let me explain how I've come up with a way to compare it, and maybe you can try to poke holes in it.
Yeah, so, and frankly, I'm sure you've spent a lot more time thinking about this than I have, so I'm not sure how helpful I can be, but.
Well, I mean, I'll explain it, and if you can't explain, poke any holes in, I'm sure somebody else can. If nobody can, then I'll just assume for now that it's the best way forward.
You're on the right track. Yeah. Okay.
So so ECS EC2.
One second. Is it helpful if you share your screen or anything? I can stop sharing.
No, I don't have anything to share,
okay.
Actually.
All right, just go on.
Okay, so the EC2 costs for ECS are that's basically it. It's just the EC2 costs. So when comparing it to Fargate, what I was trying to do was take one task definition and look at how many resources of the EC2 it was using, what percent. So let's say, for instance, that it's using 10% of the EC2 that it sits on. So I can just assume that whatever the cost of the EC2 is, I can say 10% of that EC2 cost can be attributed to that one task. So if I'm running two tasks, then that means, then whatever 20% of the EC2 cost is will be this particular task per month, So I was trying to use that as a way to peg the EC2 costs and then compare it to Fargate. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the interesting thing is that the economies of scale here are going to be variable as you can have higher and lower density on that node.
And edge cases.
Yeah,
let's
it's just rough kind of, yeah, I guess you can just come up with some rough.
Let's make some assumptions. Let's make no auto scaling and a static desired count, just to make the calculation simpler.
Yeah.
But then it doesn't matter because the result won't tell you which will be better for your workload. I don't think there's like a static workload. If you want to run ECS or Kubernetes, then you will go mostly all in. So there will be a lot of application and a lot of scaling, right?
Right, but
I don't think I would agree with that. There's like I run Jenkins in Kubernetes, and I can't scale it because it's Jenkins.
Yeah, there are some services that are just task of one, pod of one.
Yeah.
But then you will have a fleet of others, right?
Yeah, we run Jenkins workers.
Those are the ones. Those are rounding errors, right? So those are the ones you can factor out probably. I mean, if this is even worth doing the calculation, you've got to have some quantity. Sizable quantity of tasks or pods that you got to factor into it. And that's what you want to be concerned about. But yeah, sorry, we interrupted you. Please go on and please go on with your calculation here. So yeah, so basically you're taking whatever percentage that task consumed of the ECS node, and then breaking that down into the amount of memory and amount of CPU, and then trying to map that to the equivalent unit within Fargate, and then coming up to with an apples to apples comparison kind of.
Exactly, and as long as your Fargate task definition fits the the Fargate table of values, then you can probably make a one-to-one comparison. But you have to make some assumptions in order to do it. So, so without auto scaling and without changing the desired count, and if the Fargate task definition is equivalent to the original task definition, is there anything else besides Spot? Because Fargate does support Spot now.
Oh, it does. Oh, cool.
It does, yeah. I believe since November or December, they have
cool.
a Spot capacity provider. So without taking that into account or taking reserved instances into account, would that be a good one-to-one comparison? Or is there something else I'm missing?
And my understanding, from everything you read online, is that's going to clearly say that Fargate is so expensive. So I guess finding out what that multiplier is, and then figuring out if that multiplier is more or less than the human cost of the current solution, of the sunk cost.
Right. Okay.
So have you done that? I'm curious what number you've come up with for your workloads.
I've come up with some preliminary numbers, but a lot of the task definitions that you're pulling out of ECS EC2 may not be compatible with Fargate, and I've noticed that quite a few times. So you will have to probably change the task definition around. You may have to do right sizing at the same time, because if you have to change the task definition, CPU and memory, you're probably going to end up trying to audit the container and further try to right size it to make it fit those parameters. So it is kind of a complicated process. So far, I've come up with, if we can assume that you're moving over a bloated container and at the same time you right size it, then you can really, and the same time you throw in Spot into it, because right now our reserved instances are less than 70% used. Then you're throwing in a lot of factors, but in the end, I was able to prove that going to Fargate, as long as you also right size and you also pick bloated containers to right size, you can save a lot of money. But one way of just looking at the Fargate versus managed EC2s, what I learned from a previous company is if you can peg your hourly rates at, say, like 500 an hour for maintenance, obviously nobody's getting paid that much, but if you include benefits, etc., you give some kind of arbitrary number for maintenance per hour per employee. So if we're throwing in like 10-20 hours of maintenance per month for these EC2s, then you can quickly say, like, okay, so we're throwing in the gutter 10 grand per month. So, okay, 120 grand a year. So now if we factor that into the Fargate cost, how much more are we saving, and how much more time are we opening up for other problems?
That's exactly what you do.
There's another side to the equation that I run into a lot that is maybe not relevant to everyone, but if you are in a situation where you have to meet strict compliance standards, in my case, it's the United States government. I need an ATO, which is authority to operate. It's, the whole security process that results in a letter saying, okay, you're allowed to be on the network. Or if it's HIPAA or whatever, going with something like Fargate lets you inherit all that crap that AWS has done or what Azure has done if you're an Azure Container Service. And so literally all you have to get accredited on your own end is your container.
Wow.
Because you inherit all that other junk.
Oh, that's awesome. That's good to know.
That's been another win for those container services.